Good evening, everyone. I welcome you to the ongoing series on psychoanalysis, and I'm Pulkit. I'm clinical psychologist at VIMHANS, and today's talk will touch upon depression. Depression is it's a very very broad term, right? So it is used, we use it in everyday term. Also, we also see it in terms of personality. We also see it as a specific disorder. So I would just take a few moments to clarify, that what particular form of depression will we be talking about today, right? Which interestingly I also have not written so much on my slides, so you just, I just stay here only. It just struck my mind right now only. See, one very important thing is that we may use the term depression in our everyday understanding, communication and feeling. So, one very obvious meaning when I say that I'm depressed, it simply means that I'm feeling low. That something has happened at the moment I'm feeling low, so I say that, I'm depressed. So that's one meaning of depression, which is simple, like the normal sadness which comes and goes, which does not stay on, right? There's a second form of depression which is more personality based. We are going to actually touch upon this second form of depression. Now, this kind of depression has its roots pretty early in childhood. That there are people who develop in a certain way, that they grow up with a very faulty sense of self. They feel that there's something wrong with them right from a very early stage of life, and they very easily they get sad or unhappy, and their entire life is they are somewhere scared that no one would love to be with them. Yeah, and so their entire life is organized around those themes. So we would be in detail talking about this second type, which is the depressive personality. This third, which we see depression as a psychiatric disorder. There are many medical causes also which may lead to the onset of depression in a very in any person at any stage. It could be something it could be related to a hormonal imbalance, or it could be something else also. But the difference between a depressive personality and a psychiatric depression is that a psychiatric depression would come, and with treatment it would go, and then it usually does not come back. But the interesting part about the depressive personality is because it's a part of who you are, so it stays on with you. Even if you have antidepressants and everything, it stays on with you. You may feel a little better, you may feel a little pepped up, but the emotion stays on with you. And I just kind of take some more time to clarify this. So, as I said, it's very important, because what happens in our country and in our setup is that we actually are confused between the three. So if someone comes and says that I'm feeling very depressed, so we may think of it as that it's something which is very transitional, just pass right away kind of thing. So it's important to be able to distinguish between this normal sadness and other forms of depression. As I said, it is actually also very confusing because you can also have the three things at times. It's not that you can have either of them. But as I said, that the depressive personality about which we are talking today specifically, it includes repetitive personality themes, which are in some ways very lifelong, that they would not leave you. They are not the things which will come and go. It's not like this that that now you are feeling very fine, and after 8 months you feel low. It's not like that. It's like this, that in your life you are feeling at times a little normal, at times a little high, at times a little low, but at the back of your mind these low feelings are almost always there, kind of thing. And they would include that they are, the ways in which the person thinks, the ways in which the person feels, behaves and relates to others, and they typically intensify under stress. So if everything is going on fine for that person, he or she may be able to manage through life, may be able to work, may be able to, is like any one of us. But if there's an experience of stress, any kind of stress, positive stress, negative stress, then the personality themes start intensifying during that time. Yeah, and the interesting point of differentiation once again between the depressive personality and the psychiatric depression is that you may not see very severe vegetative symptoms, because when you have a psychiatric depression, it would be like this, that your appetite would drastically go down, your sleep would be drastically low, you would be like, you would not, the person may be quite restricted in their movements, and there would be a decreased sense of pleasure. But depressive personality is able to actually carry on the day-to-day tasks kind of thing. It's somewhere inside, deep down, that they have these feelings. As I again said, the antidepressant or any mood stabilizing medications do have an impact on the depressive illness, on symptoms of depression, but if someone has that kind of a personality, they may have actually a very little impact on that, because in order to heal if someone has a depressive personality, they would require a great deal of self-awareness and some kind of working through of their inner conflicts, about which we are going to touch in today's talk. Right. So we've come to this, since we are talking about depressive personality, so let me kind of talk a little bit about who is a depressive personality. So let's first of all go through some very typical signs and symptoms that we see in these people. Yeah. So in general, that's the hallmark of depressive personality. In general, across situations, it's not one situation. Like if someone has a breakup, then everyone is depressed and sad. If you are not depressed or sad, if you have a breakup, then you are abnormal, clear cut. So, or you are really defending a lot against the pain. But the hallmark of depressive personality is that whether it's a good situation or a bad situation, the person is not, the mood remains slightly low, kind of thing. It's very typical for such people to say, I remember, this patient who was not driving for the last 5 years, and after 5 years he started driving. So he came to the session and he shared that I started driving, but he said it in a very, very, very cold manner. He just came and in a very matter of fact, he said, last week I started driving. So there was no joy, no elation, that he has resumed driving after 5 years or something like that. And another thing, that you would kind of, if you have seen people like this, you would almost always wish that they should be a little more happy. You would always go and ask such people, aren't you happy? You should be slightly more happy, you are getting married, or this thing is happening, where is the joy? These people would reply to me in a very matter-of-fact way. Yeah, it's okay if that's happening. It's okay. I'm happy, kind of thing. But you never see that kind of overwhelming joy. And another thing is that even if anything slight goes wrong, it's very easy for these people to slip down into a low state. Just at the drop of a hat. That anything small that happens which upsets them, and they may start feeling low. And when they are feeling low, it's not as easy for them to come out of that low. for a normal person, if something happens and you feel low, you can bounce back a little easily. But these people, even if something small happens and they start feeling low, so they may be like, they would be in that state, and a lot of effort would be required from their side and from other people's side to pull them out. At times you may find them tearful. Another interesting thing is, which you may see in a select group of these people, that at times you may not find them tearful or sad, but you may find them irritable, short-fused, that anything which is not according to them, and they would be, irritated very easily, kind of, with you, and so those things. Another interesting dimension when we are talking about sadness is, that one can be objectively sad, subjectively sad, or both. Now what do you mean by that? It's like this, that at times these people may actually tell you that I am feeling sad, which is that they have a subjective experience of sadness. When someone says that I am feeling sad, though on the whole, when you see them from the outside, you may find them normal, or you may find them slightly inhibited, for that matter. But they are sad. So subjective sadness means that a few of these people feel that kind of sadness, and so they say that I am sad. But there is a other category which may be feeling the subjective sadness, but is too shy to or too reserved to say it, or they may also, they may be in denial of their low feelings, so they may not say, or they may not consciously, register the fact that they are feeling sad, but you as an observer may be able to make it out from their behavior, that there is something wrong with this person, that this person perpetually looks slightly unhappy. So those dimensions are there. Yeah, as I said, even when there are occasions to be happy, the person either may show very little happiness, or the happiness does not seem to last long. One school-going girl, whom I had seen a few years ago, with her the thing was that she was very good at debating, and she would win, she would go for these debating competitions, and she would win them, and she would get very interesting colorful certificates and trophies like you get in schools. So she would be very happy for a day or two that she has achieved something, she's done something. But the third day she would once again start having this feeling that she is not good, there's something wrong somewhere, and she needs to do something. So she would again start seeking an experience, to reassure herself, that she is good. So this thing may happen, right? And these people also may have markedly diminished pleasure or interest in various activities. They could have it in one group of activities, or they could have it in many spheres. But it does not mean that, what I mean to say is that they are doing those activities, they are doing those things, but they are unable to give that kind of 100%, or they are unable to feel 100%, for these things. So, like another friend actually, which comes to my mind. So he was interested in several things. Very gifted person, interested in several things in life. But the problem would be that he would, start doing something in terms of a career, or when he was studying in terms of a subject. But after a few days, he would, that pull or that attraction towards that thing will go away, kind of. So, and after a few days, he would say that I am not finding this thing exciting enough. This thing is not pleasurable enough. I can't commit to it for such a long term. I can't give 1 year or 2 years to this course. It's just too much for me, kind of. So, because of these feelings, he actually was, very badly stuck at various phases, kind of, because this sad feeling would come very easily to him. So that's why he would get into anything new. For initial few days, he would be very pepped up, but then eventually, sooner or later, this sad feeling would seep in down, and then he would be simply away from something like that. Yeah. Also, these people are at times, they like, some of them like being alone, so they don't like too much of people around them. They don't like to be in many relationships. But there's another pattern also, that there are depressed people who very actively seek out relationships and go into the relationship very actively, but their relationships are structured in not a very reciprocal manner. That in their relationships, what these people do is that they tend to be the ones who give a lot to the other person. And why do they do that is because deep down they carry this feeling that I'm bad or I'm not good enough, so they feel that they'll have to do a lot in their relationship, only then people are going to stick around with them. Or secondly, they feel that they can, or they get a good feeling. They get a feeling of good self-esteem by giving a lot to people. So their relationships are structured in a very different way, and they then, as a result, they also suffer from various kind of relationship problems. This personality structure also has some kind of a mild impact, I would say, on their ability to think, concentrate, and decision making, but they are not compromised people. They can think, concentrate, and take decisions, but they are uncertain in that, and they may not be able to think, because they are too bound by what is going on inside them, so they are also not able to give their 100% to this. Some of these people, very few, may also report, this feeling of getting tired very easily, but this feeling then is not due to a general medical condition. It's about that, that they feel low. So when you're feeling low, that also gives you this feeling of a chronic fatigue at times. Right. I remember this, this elderly lady who once told me that she was like very upset and very tearful, So I asked her that why are you like that? And so she simply said that the breakfast that I made in the morning for my family was not, was not good. There was less salt in one thing, and one more thing which I forget. It was a very trivial thing, and I interacted with this person at 5 p.m. in the evening, so which was well beyond the breakfast hours. And no one in the family had really told her, that you've done a bad job, or one was as such displeased. It was a minor thing, but she was carrying a lot of guilt because of that one mistake. So that's another thing very common in people with depressive personalities, that they have huge guilt. That they walk as if, or they are, from the inside, they feel as if they've done a huge crime. Their guilt is to that intensity. They are bad people, even if, something wrong they've done, they would feel even a slight thing, even like, saying no to someone, that, that I can't do this thing for you at this moment, will make them feel very guilty. They've done something wrong. Now, interesting thing is, and we will also touch upon this thing in detail, that that why this feeling of inappropriate guilt. This generally happens is because people with depressive personalities, they are not good at expressing and dealing with negative feelings in relationships. So if they are feeling angry with someone or disappointed with someone, they can't really handle that, or they can't communicate that, so that some change around that happens. They generally suppress this, and the anger that they have for the other person, they turn it back on their own self, and that's why they carry a huge burden of guilt. Right. And as a complementary mechanism, because they carry all the hatred and criticism inward rather than outward towards someone. These people usually appear to be very generous, sensitive, and compassionate to a fault. So even if you make blunders kind of thing, they would not at times react to it so strongly as someone may, who does not have a depressive personality. When you delve deeper into them, that's what one gets to hear, that I am back. It may be a very obvious feeling for some of them. It may be a very, very hidden, deep down inside feeling, which you may actually be able to touch upon after a lot of interaction or being able to understand them. But that's what they feel, that I am back. And sadly, they also, that any kind of human emotions or feelings or strivings which are connected to selfishness, they feel very, very conflicted and upset about it. So they are uncomfortable with greed, with selfishness, with competition, with vanity, with pride, with anger, with envy, with lust. So they would kind of, hate themselves for having these very, very normal human emotions that anyone would have. And they would really feel very upset and very low that they have this thing. And one person whom I came across, he was unable to achieve, because in his mind, striving to be competitive and trying to outperform other people was kind of used to make him feel guilty. That when I'm being competitive for him meant being aggressive, and so he felt very guilty about that, and despite being very intelligent and the fact that he could have achieved a lot, he wasn't able to achieve that. They also feel, as I said, because when they carry this notion that I'm bad, they also then have conviction that something is very drastically wrong in their self, which is driving people away. And they then feel that that they may get abandoned and rejected by people due to their flaws, and they which then starts expressing itself very, very complicatedly in their relationships. Because at times what happens is that when they are in a relationship, either they do not allow people to come very close to them. Like one person whom I know of starts the relationship on a very promising note, but after 2 to 3 months simply loses out all the charge in the relationship, because there is a fear deep down that if this person comes too close to me, the person will really get to see that I am so horrible, that I am horrible physically, I am horrible emotionally, and this person would kind of go away. So in order to avoid this kind of feeling of huge rejection, the feeling that this person fears would come. The moment any relationship starts getting serious, this person simply walks out of that relationship. Like the defense is that I should not allow someone too close to me. If someone comes very close to me, someone will be able to see how horrible I am, and I know that I am very horrible, and therefore this other person will leave me and go away. And the fear in this person is so much that this person will never ever let never ever test this conviction. We all carry certain convictions about ourselves, but if we have, say, an open mindset, we want to give it a try and test it out. That fine, but I know I am horrible, but let me still see if this person, still loves me, or if still something can happen. But if your fear is too much, or if your conviction is just too great, it's there in stone, then that also becomes a very, very fearful kind of goal for you, which you would run away from. Or then, as I said, the second thing that these people may do, which I know this girl who is very brilliant, who is very beautiful, who is very gifted, but but she would kind of, her first love relationship was with someone who was, economically, educationally, in all aspects, much, kind of below her level. And the reason being that somewhere, she wanted to be sure that I should not be rejected or abandoned in the relationship. And how can you ensure that when you make a compromise? Another thing that many people do is that when they enter a relationship, they start doing a lot for the other person, because once again they feel that I'm not good. It means then I have to do a lot to keep the other person around, tied to me. Depressive personalities usually are very hard workers, so they would be very good students, they would be very good, at times employees in the office, or they may also do very good in some of their, other pursuits, but they rarely succeed to their own satisfaction. Even when they achieve, as I gave you the example of this girl, that even when they achieve, either they are not too much happy about that, they feel there's a lot to be done, or or the happiness is very short-lived. It will just last for some time and then trickle down, and then after any achievement, they the interesting thing about these people is that generally if you have been achieving, so when you look back at your own self, you have this idea that yes, I have done this, and I'm this kind of person today. These people do not integrate their achievement in their self-concept. So if you ask them to look back at their own self, they would simply say, I have done nothing. Even if you were to point it out to them that well, you did this, you did that, they'll say, oh really, will you call that an achievement? Is it worthy enough to be called something? So something like that. If you mention any positive trait in them, they would, in fact, at times they may feel, that you are lying to them, that you are just trying to make them feel good. So they may also take it in that kind of manner. Yeah. Now, this whole belief that bad things happen to me because I deserve them, because I'm bad, is like, very devastating in some sense, because it binds these people to unfavorable situation, unfavorable people, and unfavorable circumstances. Because generally what happens is that when you are in an unfavorable situation, if that situation is not in consonance with your self-concept, if it is in dissonance with your self-concept, you will take some action to get out of that situation. If you are in a job and you feel that you are being paid peanuts, if you are in a relationship where you feel that you are being given a raw deal, you feel that kind of internal rage to simply get out of that situation. But if you don't feel any dissonance, if you feel that yes, that you are in a bad job and that's what you deserve, or that's more or less something that you could get, you will not really do much with that kind of confidence. You may make an attempt to change it, but you would lack that kind of an inner confidence, to say to go for an interview or succeed in an interview, or to pursue it very aggressively. So that is a very sad thing, that because of this belief, these people really stay stuck up in bad jobs, bad relationships, bad circumstances, and that has a huge impact on them. Will you like to share something, that brought a smile? No, nothing to share. I thought there's something to share. Anyways, will anyone like to comment on what we have discussed till now, based on your everyday experiences, your life experiences with people, with your own self?
See, we should not lament about losses and failure, and we should be prepared for facing the present and future in a positive manner.
True.
We should behave civilized manner. But if the other person is idiot, then we should be diplomatic and close the topic.
See, losses and failures are a very tricky thing.
Yes, everybody loses
But
everybody.
it's and we'll come to that. You know, what works well is that you should obviously feel sad when there is a loss, but then you should be able to gather courage to move on from it. So both the things are required, and I'm going to talk about that. That in some ways, expressing sadness and to some extent, being in touch with your sadness is actually very helpful and very healing. If it keeps on stretching beyond a point, then it's obviously not. So both the things are required, obviously. Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah. This character reminds me of Prince Hamlet of Denmark.
Okay. Will you just say more about that, so that some of the people who don't know so much about Hamlet may be able to relate to that?
Rewind the slides.
Okay.
Indecision, sadness, inaction, feeling of guilt, and taking procrastination.
True.
Almost all the points that you mentioned, except probably this last one.
Yeah.
So I got examining these beliefs. They are fitting in the pattern of Prince Hamlet.
So we can also say, or I guess that maybe someone has already diagnosed Hamlet with something like this already. Yeah, true. Yes.
I know a patient who blames others for all his problems.
Okay, we had a talk on this. That's a very different personality. That's more called cluster B or a borderline kind of personality, in which you have that you would blame other people in that. See, what generally happens is that now, in order to just respond to what you said, I'll just explain it very briefly, because that does not go too much with what we have to cover. But what generally happens is that that when anything wrong goes on in your life, if you are too fragile, if you are just too weak and too fragile, then you would not want to obviously blame it on your own self, and then you develop this kind of a strategy where you would say that the world is wrong or X and Y are wrong, and you would kind of blame it on them. Depressive personalities in that way are psychologically, paradoxically, they are stronger. They are stronger than the example that you take. That they are not so fragile that they, in fact, they in some sense are quite brave, that they can, take so much of negative, effect on them. So they don't generally use these kind of defenses. In some aspects, some people who are depressed do that, and when they do it in very specific situations, that when they feel that there is someone out there who's very good, very nice, and will help them out, and if that person does not rise up to the occasion, then they may feel let down. But the kind of person you are mentioning, what I'm able to guess from your explanation, is of a different mindset.
But person has been diagnosed as a depressed person, and
Okay.
is also taking treatment for depression.
Okay, see, now I want to just bust this myth over here. Now see, taking antidepressants and being diagnosed as depression, you can actually give antidepressants to people with many different psychological conditions, and they will be very helpful to all of them. Why? I'll tell you. Because antidepressants are simple things that make you happy. They are artificial happiness tablets. So for anyone who's angry, who's sad, they do work quite well. So I mean, that thing has to be looked from various angles, on various points. Yeah. But if the kind of person you are talking about, if that person is being given antidepressant, it's not wrong, because that will kind of make him a little happy, and when one is happy, they may not blame others so much, kind of thing. that's
See, these traits which are being described are very similar to those which any genius or any outstanding person will have. So perhaps
जो सारे genius होते हैं, they all have
for
many
example,
issues.
Vincent
Each
van
one of
Gogh.
us have issues.
I found Vincent van Gogh. He cut his ears, he did all sorts of things. But he was a great creator.
True.
And a lot of scientists I found they are depressed, and many of them commit suicide. So is it not that it's a normal trait of creativity? It is nothing unusual. You know, everybody has a little bit of depression.
See, that ways, you know, you can pick up the diagnostic manual of psychiatric disorders. Nothing is unusual. You know, in fact, when you go through it, you will see so many things inside you. You know, so when we are talking about this, we are not saying it's unusual or wrong. Why we are doing it is we are doing it with the intention that if someone suffers a lot with this, then they may take a call on this. It's not to say that anyone who has these traits, if someone has these traits and if someone is living their life very, they are happy with the way their life is shaping, they are content, they are satisfied, no cause to worry. Even that kind of thing is there. But if someone struggles, if someone has this and someone struggles, then that becomes an area where some understanding or some intervention or some rethinking may be required. Just that.
Antidepressant raises the risk of self-harm by 3 times.
What is the source? Nice, interesting.
It came in Times of India.
Oh.
It has come 3 times.
It must have come in some journal, because.
Foreign page.
Yeah. The Times Trends page. Oh, okay. Yeah, that. When any such kind of research happens, statistics is a very interesting thing. You can actually mold the finding, you can take it around, especially when you are studying correlation or something like that, you can take it around in very interesting ways, but it may have some value in it, right? Anyone else would like to share something or comment? Yeah.
I don't know whether you covered it already or you may cover it later. But how
as far as the causes and treatment are concerned, I'll be covering them. Anything else apart from that is most welcome.
Well, I'm just wondering as a layperson, how do you distinguish between depressive personalities, which seems that this is how they have been for a while and this is how they'll continue to be?
Yeah.
Between that and a response to a crisis in your life?
Oh, great. That's a very easy thing. See, you can get to know by simply interacting with the person and 1 or 2 people close to them. What you simply have got to do is that you've got to find out that the kind of state the person is in right now. One very obvious question to ask will be that has there been something which precipitated this, something unusual. So one very easy thing is to that. The second thing is to simply get some information on their personality. By that what I mean is that how do they generally behave, how are they at their work, how are they, and simply ask them and someone close to them, that has this person more or less always been like this, or have you seen some kind of a change in last few months or few years? If the person says that there has been, because generally a person who has had depression through crisis or depression as a disorder, very interestingly, will be able to actually tell you that yes, I was actually fine, कि उस वक्त मैं बिल्कुल ठीक था, सब करता था, यहाँ जाता था, वहाँ आता था, ये पता नहीं उस महीने से या उस वक्त से मुझे क्या हो गया है. I think that thing will come out very strongly. Or as a person will say कि नहीं, I have been more or less like this. And when you interact with their family members, they obviously will be able to give you a lot of information because they would have seen very clear kind of a change. So these 2 very simple things are required.
So when you are talking to a patient or whatever, would you talk only to that person or would you also talk to the family for your diagnosis?
Okay. That actually depends more so on the wishes of the person who comes to seek help. That whether he or she wants, because many times people want to keep it strictly confidential. But even then, while interacting with them, see, this is something that you'll be able to tease out. It's not something so hard to tease out, because the person is depressed. They have a good memory of what has happened, so that thing is not really compromised. Yeah. Right. Yes. Another very important characteristic is what we call that these people are very, very thin-skinned. They are not extremely fragile, but they are thin-skinned. By that we mean is that if there's any negative feedback, if you have interacted with someone like that, say someone works with you, and you say 4 things that you were supposed to do this, and this you could do, this you could do, this you could do well, but this is something where you failed, you could not do that. That they are just going to hear that, that one thing is going to simply get magnified in their mind, and they will not actually hear the other 3-4 things, or they may not remember that, it was just yesterday when you applauded them, or they will also not be able to retain this fact that you are a very supportive person and you don't mean ill for them, but that one thing will really pinch them very, very hard. So, because they are always carrying this inner belief that I am bad, and they are constantly trying to fight against it, constantly trying to disprove it, any information that you are not up to the mark is may cause them a very, very heavy blow. Like this lady that I shared who made some kind of a minor goof up in the morning breakfast. Now that's a very normal thing, but this person is already struggling with this sense that I am not good, I don't, that there's something wrong with me, I don't work well, so anything that happens, it really intensifies that sense. So, and it's actually very dysfunctional, because at times we keep on talking to these people and saying that it's a minor thing, come on, why are you so upset by it? For this person, it's not a minor thing. For them, it has somewhere went inside and has pricked their sense of self. It's not a minor thing. So, any kind of criticism would devastate them. Yeah. As I said, in any message that includes mention of their shortcomings, they will tend to hear only that as a part of communication. So, if you say 10 good things, 1 not so good thing, so they focus on 1 not so good thing. If they have a very nice wardrobe and 1 bad thing in the wardrobe, so they may be upset about that 1 bad thing in the wardrobe, then something else. So that's how it kind of comes up at times. Okay, going to the causes. Any idea, that what may be causing this? From your experience, yes.
If you do 20 good activities, people will praise you only 1. But if you commit 1 error,
the world is a bad
they will be after you.
The world certainly is a bad place. That is there. That I agree on. The world is a bad place. Yeah. Or else, yeah.
Biological reasons, genetic factors.
Okay, see, I'm more so talking about the depressive personality over here. That, for that as such, whatever research has happened, there has not been so much of documentation of these factors. So I'm really not touching upon that. In the depression as a disorder, the extreme form of psychiatric depression, you see, there have been some biological factors should be documented, and neurotransmitter abnormalities as well. And anyone else would like to share something about
something hereditary?
Yeah?
Is it something hereditary?
Something hereditary. Yeah, see, some studies do have documented this, the ones that have been done, say, in the the twin studies and the various other studies, they have found some biological genetic base kind of thing. But it's also a lot more experiential as well. And since we are talking about personality over here, we would be actually going in for many experiential factors, because when one works with these experiential factors, there is a change, kind of thing, in the way the person is. But yes, both the research on the hereditary factors and the temperamental factors, like each child is born with a certain temperament. They do show that at times there can be a certain tendency towards it. It's only a tendency.
I think if you remind the person the same thing, same line again and again,
Yeah.
maybe crowd and environment, make the person more depressive on time or reaction.
So that if you remind the person,
The situation again and again.
you mean to say that if there's an unfavorable situation, for sure, yeah, that if that if the
The same
person,
line you repeat again and again.
yeah, that.
The repetitive.
Yeah, in a way that if the person is criticized very repetitively over something that happened, that obviously can have an impact. Yes,
Severe criticism, sharp criticism.
sharp criticism, obviously, yes, true,
Repeatedly.
very true.
Bringing up in
Especially in childhood.
Especially in childhood, certainly. Yeah,
bringing up in childhood experience.
very true. Yeah, true. Yeah, so we start with this. We were talking about mourning, See, too much of mourning is bad, But if you also see any cultural ritual, each culture has some rituals around mourning, There's an importance of mourning in our lives, and mourning also has a psychological function. Because whenever there is any kind of loss or any kind of negative feeling, there are very, very intense emotions inside of the person. You cannot simply throw them out from your system. You cannot cut yourself away from them. It's something hot boiling inside. And everyone needs some time, some resources, some methodologies to cope with it. And you generally, whenever there is a loss, you never kind of, it does leave a scar, it leaves a vacuum in your life, which does get filled with time, but it's not something that would leave you, or you can never, most of the time you can never look back and say that we are very happy that that loss happened. Kind of thing. We may say that we coped with it. We now think that that was in some other perspective, but we can't say that we are that loss happened to us was something to be very happy about, kind of thing. So, believe you me, everyone has a threshold for bearing painful feelings. There are some people who can, you would have seen some people when they are sad, they would simply, put on sad music and, they would hear to it. There are some people who would kind of, really say that, sad songs will do whatever. You play something peppy. Even when they are sad, they play something very, very peppy. So, that's a small example, but that just tells us that everyone has a threshold or a capacity to be with painful feelings. There are some people that if someone is crying in front of them, they will hold that person, or their eyes will also kind of, become wet with tears. There are some people who simply say, don't cry, I can't handle it. Or there are worse some people who actually, get very angry or hit people back, that how the hell are you crying, stop crying. So that's like that everyone has a threshold for pain. But since pain is actually, an experience which is very common in our life, it also actually requires, the way we handle all the emotions. How do we handle our emotions? It's by experiencing them, by being with them. And once we are with them and there are people around us to support us, we find a way out of them, through something or way or other. But if you are in an atmosphere which simply discourages grief, which says, रोना तो है ही, sad तो होना ही नहीं है. Actually, what happens is then the person starts suppressing the grief on one hand, which makes them feel depressed on inherent. Secondly, the person blames themselves that if I have grief or if I am feeling sad, there's something wrong. You know, there's something bad about me to have these feelings, because these feelings are not acceptable in my group or in my family. So these two things happen, and then they kind of they may foster a very depressive kind of tendency, because all three things happen. If you are in such an atmosphere, one, you think that grief is something very bad. Second, you suppress grief, and you take it all inside of you. You think that there's something wrong with me because I feel this. And thirdly, most importantly, you never develop skills or courage to face it and cope with it. Because it's also something that when we, when negative emotions come to us in manageable doses, that they need to come to us in manageable doses as children, and only then we require capacities to deal with them. If they either come to us in a very strong current, or if they are prohibited somehow, we actually don't get that experience. Many times it's very relieving for the people, when they are not open to a sad feeling, and then they start being with a sad feeling. They initially are very happy to learn this, that the sad feeling is not devastating. They actually feel glad. Though they are very sad, they feel glad. Okay, sadness is nothing to be scared about. इससे डरने की कोई जरूरत नहीं. It's also a feeling. It's also emotion, kind of thing. Right. And as I mentioned earlier, that it can also result from the hostility towards others that then becomes self-directed. So what happens is that if you have people around you and you are unable to somehow love them or develop a connection with them, because the fact of the matter is that all of us in our close relationships, we do experience a lot of negative emotions. It's a fact. But generally, in order to have a good relationship, and in order to not feel depressed, what needs to be done is that you need to find a way out of somehow communicating those feelings in a manner that the other person can tolerate. Like, your communication should not be that simply then starts destroying the other person, but in a manner that the other person can tolerate, and in a manner that you could still preserve your relationship. If that does not happen, then what happens is that the hostility starts getting directed towards your own self, and then you actually start feeling very guilty about feeling very bad. And as children, this thing happens. If they get this message that to have any angry feeling is a very, very bad thing, so then they then they feel that anger is bad, and I'm bad in having I'm bad in being angry, and their entire hatred and rage, it kind of starts going into their own selves, towards their own selves. Right. Yeah. As one was mentioning, that loss of an important person early in the individual's life, either in reality or fantasy, can trigger the onset of depressive tendencies. Now, loss of an important person, I mean any person could be important. Even a pet dog could be very important for someone who has a deep attachment to it. So even a caretaker, a nanny can be extremely important for someone. So that's the thing, that if you have a loss at a very early stage, because what happens is that you don't have the way to think about it, express it, and deal with it. Generally, how do we cope with the losses is when we have a language. When we develop a language, then we can go and tell someone कि वो नहीं है, या ऐसा हुआ तो मुझे अच्छा नहीं लग रहा, या मेरे मन में ये feeling आ रही है, kind of thing. But if it's at such an early stage where there was no language to think about it or to express it or to communicate it, then that loss is like a very important loss for that person, and it could kind of trigger. And even if, say, someone has a language, but if the loss is very major, or the person has not been able to cope with it, then it can foster such tendencies.
Fantastic.
It can, sorry for that, but we in psychology at times, for various things we use the word fantasy, so it just came out as a slip. It wasn't. I meant that it fosters depressive tendencies, not fantasies. Our next talk would actually be on this. It will be on grief, separation and loss, where I would touch more in detail about it, because I think that loss and depression are actually two very broad topics, and one cannot do justice to actual grief and loss in one presentation. So I would be taking it up the next time. But in general, when someone goes through loss, they actually have a lot of various kind of feelings. They are feeling helpless, they are feeling sad, they are feeling enraged. They have this whole thing, that why me? So there are multiple factors which we would touch upon in the next talk. Okay, another interesting thing is that, usually when a loss happens, if your attachment has been more or less of a positive nature, and so the person is actually able to, in most of the cases, able to negotiate with the loss. But generally, if there was a person which, about whom someone feels both love and hatred, intense love and intense hatred for the same person, then that actually obstructs the process of natural molding. And that also can cause make someone develop this kind of a personality structure. You all were talking a lot about rejection, so here we kind of go with that. The children who feel rejected very early in life have a very low self-esteem. That see, for anyone to be not depressed, one important prerequisite is that they should have a strong sense of self, that they should feel that they are good. They should have this conviction that I am good. And this conviction generally comes from life experiences. And it generally comes from, like, no one is born with this idea that I am good. Everyone is born very unsure of how they are. But it's right from the very early stage, when someone says, oh, your smile, like even for a baby, when someone says that this baby has a very nice smile, or isne ye kiya, which is something very cute and very nice about, or then when this child starts growing, someone, like when people get love, in the correct manner, in the correct form, I must say that, they generally develop a good sense of self. But if they kind of get too much of criticism, it's also very interesting, because many times people criticize others with this idea that this will make them improve, or this will make them feel good. Now it is your idea. It may or it may not go very well with the other person's temperament, mindset, or any of these things. So children generally need to feel a lot of love and a lot of acceptance, for themselves, and it's only then that they start developing this idea that I am good, I am valuable, and that then gives them a very strong sense of self. If they don't get this idea, so they have a low self-esteem, and they carry this idea that I am bad, and then they can be very easily, get depressed in life. So that's one very important thing. Right. So what happens then is that whenever there is a threat to the person's self-esteem, that whenever in life, when you feel that you are going for a competition, simple debate competition, but you fear that, that will prove that I am bad and I am wrong, and and if you really lose it, you start feeling depressed. If you can't crack an entrance, you will feel like that. If someone says something to you, you will feel like that. So it all depends on the kind of self-concept and the extent of positive self-regard that you have for your own self. Right. There's also this whole thing about, I think that when a child is growing up, both independence and dependence also need to be very, very fine-tuned. Like it actually requires a lot of effort. It's very much easier said than done, but it requires a lot of effort to see that where does the child need your shoulder so that he or she can rely on and depend on, and where he or she needs independence. Both the things are very important for development of an adequate self-concept. If anything goes missing, or if they are in a wrong proportion, then it may kind of upset the flow of things. So, like what generally happens is that at times what happens is that there are some children who need to depend more, or who by temperament or who by very, very early experiences who are very vulnerable. Now, if a parent, or if someone close to them would think that this is being too kiddish, and simply outrightly rejects that need by saying that I'm not going to do it, come what may, kind of thing, then that actually may kind of lead to a lot of frustration, and the child then feels that I'm a failure, that I'm not able to do this thing, or I'm not able to be content in this thing what is expected of me, so I'm a failure. So it leads to a lot of helplessness, which then breeds a lot of inner frustration and self-directed anger. So it's very important to actually see, and it's also not so much about that when we're talking about these things, it's not so much about sanctioning it. It's not simple. It's not like that if someone is wanting something, you give it to them or you don't give it to them. It's more about trying to understand, trying to engage in a conversation. Why they can't do it on their own. Why do they want you? And then saying something or doing something that makes the child feel more reassured. So I don't mean to say that if the child simply gets up every day and says that that I can't go to the school alone, you have to accompany me. So it's not so rather than simply jumping to it and saying, oh, you can't go alone, don't worry, I'll drop you, kind of thing. That is also faulty, because the child will never then be able to face this separation and develop resources to deal with it. Or simply telling the child, no, you have to go, and I'm simply putting you out from the door, and I'm closing the door, school bus will come, you get onto it and get it. So both these are extremes, and the whole thing is not so much about that whether one needs to sanction it or not sanction it. The whole thing is about trying to understand, the child's unique experience. Why does the child want that thing? Why is the child unable to do that thing if you feel they can do it? And then trying to understand them, communicate with them, and help them develop those capacities. Right. And any kind of disrupted attachment, as a child, also leads to this view of self as unlovable and inadequate, and of the other people as unresponsive. Anyone wants to share something about, cover a lot about the childhood environment and life experiences? Anyone would like to comment upon that, or share your own experiences, or of someone you have seen? Yes?
Have you got any questionnaire regarding the, have you seen the newspapers, there's marks for 1 mark, 2 mark, 3 mark, 4 mark, 5 marks, and the total results in this, you are in this personality?
there are many questionnaires like that, obviously, but they are not very valid, I would say. It's very easy to make a questionnaire, but see, why it's not so valid is because many of these things, the person even themselves is not aware that these things are happening to them. But yeah, there are questionnaires which can,
Judge, as a person, as a patient or not?
हाँ, वो तो बहुत है. Like you could, if you and very easily available on internet. In fact, I think this, I just asked the students, this Hamilton anxiety depression scale is very freely available on internet. Yeah, so and I think few more. I think even the better one is Beck depression inventory. That's freely available online. Someone was asking. Yeah.
See, we build perfectionism in studies and we are zero in sports like Olympics. And all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, depressed boy. Our kids are growing obese and that's a sad state of affairs.
Yeah, that's very sad state of affairs actually.
Basically, the parents are a lot on a denial.
True.
There are a lot. I think that's the hazard. That's the biggest hazard.
And I also think that's like slightly drifting up away from the topic. But since you mentioned this and you mentioned this, I also feel that that our culture in general has become so much achievement oriented. That there is actually everyone is simply running from one goal to another goal. Which I think is very unhealthy for adults also and for children also. Like no one has an hour in the day, where they can just kind of
give that time.
Sit and talk. Yeah. So I think that is for sure taking a
I
tool.
have
Yes.
a query.
Yeah.
You mentioned that changing of, supposing there's a nanny for a child.
Right.
Usually with a working mother, that's the usual norm. Even if the grandmother is taking care, there's a nanny, and the maid is often replaced. So what is the impact on the child?
See, that will depend on the kind of bond the child and the nanny has. Like if they have a very intense bond, then the child would then it will be actually a very important separation and loss for the child for sure, which can have a huge impact. So that's why it's generally important. Now one can't have a straight answer or straight way out on it, because it depends on the person's condition and their setup, why they and generally these days everyone does need to keep a nanny. But as far as it can be there, it would be better if a close family member were to spend more time with the child and the nanny were to do some other things than being responsible for the main caretaking of the child. That's what I would say, that that you could do. But I know it's not realistically possible in many situations, and that's fair enough. It's not possible in some ways. There are many people where they're just husband and wife and both have to work for the future of the child, and it's not possible. So one can't. But yeah, it would. And see, generally the thing is that if the child is at a stage where the child can communicate, then you have a huge advantage, because then you can actually spend a lot of time with the child. Initially, I'll tell you that initially, if the child is able to speak and communicate, you need to prepare the child for the separation. So if you feel that the nanny would be going, and if you are lucky to get to know it in advance, you should generally start preparing the child that she's going to go away. Kind of, And if the child is too attached to the nanny, it may be important to have her phone number or some kind of something like this, so the child can maybe speak to her, interact with her, kind of thing. If that person is going permanently away, then I think one will need to in detail talk to a child about how they're feeling, because see, if the child is too attached, so for a child that's actually a figure who was performing all mother-like functions. And generally what happens is that, that if you are a parent, if you are a father or mother, and if you actually feel that the child has more attachment towards the nanny, you are not, you're not very sensitive to it, because it somewhere hurts you or makes you envious as well at times. It's my child. How can But from the point of view of the child, it would actually require a lot of sensitivity and openness in talking to the child about that and getting to hear what they have to kind of say. Yeah. Yes.
Is it true that a lot of early childhood experiences happen between 0 to 4? Is that a scientific bit of looking at early childhood experience?
See, scientific, I really don't know, but when we do clinical work, we do see that a huge deal of personality structure, like the basic structure does set up at that point of time, kind of thing. And so that does have an impact. And yes, as far as studies are also concerned, like there have been some studies which have been done in say children who were in a very traumatic environment at a very young age, kind of thing, and then they were removed away from that environment. But it is generally documented that that they have a very different kind of a personality as compared to people the children who were not a part of that traumatic environment. So it does have an impact for sure. Yes.
What are the other sources of self-esteem? You said that children come to depend upon the appreciation.
Appreciation, yeah.
From parents. So are there any intrinsic sources of self-esteem for a small child?
See, for a small child, intrinsic sources obviously are there, that that when he or she does something which they enjoy, that if they are wanting to do something and they are unable to do, and then they are able to do it, so they do get that kind of kick. But for very small children, again, see, because it is very heavily dependent on the caregivers and the environment. That's what I would say. If they get the required amount over there, it interestingly also happens that when initially you get good extrinsic self-esteem, as a child, then you are actually able to dissociate from it, and you then go deeper for intrinsic sources of self-esteem, because you have got that love and you are not really hungry for that love and that admiration from people outside. So that's also the channel via people, because when people get enough of that, at times they simply outgrow that need, kind of thing.
What is beneath anger and rage?
What?
What is beneath anger and rage?
What?
What is beneath anger and rage, and how do we heal and recover from it?
Oh, we'll come to that. We'll come to a little bit of that, to the extent what I can share in the talk. Yeah. Yeah.
Finish that.
What?
To finish that, then we'll take all questions.
Sure. Okay. We just one last question and then we'll go to that. Yeah.
I think every parent has something that they are guilty about, that they feel they didn't do quite right when they were raising their children. And the parent-child relationship is a dynamic one. बच्चा भी बड़ा हो रहा है, आप भी बुजुर्ग हो रहे हो, जो भी है. So the adult parent-child relationship, as you both mature, the child matures and the parent matures as a parent, to what extent can you address some of the wrongs that you may have, commission and omission, in an adult relationship between a parent?
See, if there has a lot that has happened, then a lot of individual work would be required with the child, of course. No denying that fact. But I think that at any stage, a large majority of children, when they grow up as adults, they're very open to this fact that if you were to simply go back and share it with them and share your guilt, if it has been a very damaged relationship, then it may take in. Yeah, but otherwise in normal course, I think they are very I think they are very open and very welcoming of that fact, and it also I think it does intensify the bond as well. I think because see, if there was something wrong and the child also has been always living with that sense that there was something wrong, I think the very acknowledgement of that is very healing for the child. That something was wrong. So there should not be any shame or guilt in sharing that acknowledgement. Yes.
May I ask?
Last question, and then we go on.
Most of the questions are pertaining to children.
Yeah.
What about elderly patients?
Yeah.
Normally, when you are beyond 70, possibilities you don't have a spouse.
Right.
Children has gone away and settled in their own life, and you feel depressed.
Yeah.
Is it a consequence of the development in the family, or is it again something part of the depressive disease, depression as a disease that you have described?
See, I would say if there's someone whose spouse has gone, there would be a feeling of sadness, and feeling of loneliness. What I'm saying is, and that's what I was saying, that it's like this, that the loss, whenever you have a loss, and an important loss, a very important loss like that, sad feelings would be there. They would be there. It does not mean that can be labeled as depression. But if someone already had a pre-existing depressive personality, that can be very intensified under such a circumstance, because you had a major support, a major companion in your life, and that has gone missing, and that does trigger a huge range of reactions. So I think that needs to be very carefully teased out, that whether it's a normal feeling of grief, and at that age and stage when you have no one around, even the normal feelings of grief can be actually very intense, because actually there's nothing else to look forward to in some sense. If you don't have other anchor points in terms of, say, spirituality, or in terms of social service or something like that. If you don't have an anchor point, then it's actually very difficult, to come to terms with such a loss. So yeah, I think. Sorry, I don't have anything against you personally, but I have to restrict you here and move on. I'll come to you when I finish. I'll take the first question from you. Right. So another core dynamic in this personality is the individual's attempt to deal with low self-esteem by idealization and devaluation of self or other people. I just put it across very briefly that generally what happens is that when you are feeling very low, you need to do something very grand, or you need to be associated with someone very grand to pull you out of that. And generally what happens is that whenever you don't find things grand enough, you either don't find your own self grand enough, or you don't find the other person grand enough, you feel very let down. In simple language, what I mean to say is that you have an unrealistic standard. You have an unrealistic standard for yourself, you have an unrealistic standard for people around you, which again intensifies your unhappy feelings. Right, so coming to healing the depressed self, that what can be done about that? Just a minute. I need to heal my throat first. Yeah, since we talked a lot about self-esteem, so first and foremost, a lot of work needs to be done around restoring the self-esteem. By that, what we mean? Like, first of all, in restoring self-esteem, the first step also should be self-awareness. That it needs to be identified that if someone has a low self-esteem, it does not simply function like that you start appreciating them and they will heal. That will obviously make an impact if you appreciate them, but it's very important for them to understand what are the sources of this sense of self, that they are carrying, and why understanding this is very important, because till the time you don't understand, you're not self-aware about how you came to a certain point, you take it for granted, People generally ask this question that why does one need to delve in the past and why does one need to understand, why does one need to be self-aware? There are many people who are very aggressive, these goal-oriented people, they say, इस सब में क्यों जाना है, बस इस चीज़ को करो, आज से ही करना शुरू कर दो, सोचना शुरू कर दो that you are too good, you are too bright, you are too brilliant. But this has a role, because until and unless you understand why you are a certain way, you take it for granted. The very fact that you explore and you try to understand how you came to this point, that takes a huge burden away from you. You understand how you came to this point, and you are able to see that maybe this is not so much of me, but this is how I became. This is how I came to this point. So that's why self-awareness is very important, and to understand that how various experiences of illness, separation, rejection, difference, and various related fantasies about yourself, that how they make you think about yourself are very important to understand. Then thereafter, it is important to understand how these experiences lead to a distortion in perception of self and others. Like in simple terms, how have they impacted your self-view and the view of the other people, kind of thing. So that's very important to see this thing, that how it impacts. Like for a person who, this kind of exercise can be very helpful for the person who does not understand this thing, but who simply achieves one goal and then all of a sudden starts feeling empty because he or she has not achieved the next goal. And they are very goal-driven. They think if we achieve something, we'll feel better. But what generally happens is that even if they are able to achieve next and then not the third, they are again down to depression. For such a person, it's very important to understand, A, why are they so fragile internally? Why does their self-esteem is so dependent on achievement? And what experiences have led to it? Once they understand that, their hunger and their rush, and their this very easily shuttling balance, it can be contained. So it's very important to do this kind of self-awareness exercise. Right. Once these distortions are identified, they need to be challenged repeatedly by revisiting the past in your mind and comparing it with here and now. So once someone understands that that I carry this thing, that I am not too good because of a lot of criticism that I went through, such person needs to do this mental exercise million trillion times. That the next time when they feel they are low, they need to tell themselves, that this is not me, this is what I was told. They need to very gently remind themselves again and again and again and again. And at times people kind of come think that we are doing it, still it doesn't go. It takes, each individual has his or her own journey and it takes a lot of time to do it, kind of thing for each person, but they need to very gently remind it, and they need to be objectively grounded, in here and now. So they need to see that that was the past and they are in here and now, and they need to be grounded in that. Yeah, and then what generally happens is that once these distortions are really challenged, they lead to a new set of experiences which start enhancing self-esteem. One thing that happens is that the person starts going deeper into their insight, and they start rediscovering that what is it, as we were talking about these intrinsic and extrinsic sources. So generally what happens is that once you question this, once you question and once you are able to challenge these distortions, the person moves to a deeper stage where they are not so much hungry for the outer world approval, but then they start thinking, what is it that they value? what is it that they want, and they then start pursuing it, which kind of then enhances their self-esteem. Then what happens is that getting in touch with their true or authentic self and allowing it to blossom in various spheres, such as creative activities, work, and in relationships also, it helps tremendously, kind of that. I know of this person that that she used to be very, very depressed, in for a long time, and she also had a very specific phobia, that he could not, that she had started being very homebound and would not go out, kind of thing. Yeah. So it actually kind of came out that that she somewhere had a lot of resentment towards many people, and as a result she was kind of suppressing those feeling, and that's why she had all that panic. So by this whole self-awareness, when she got in touch with those very intense negative feelings, she started communicating it very in some manner, and that reduced her panic and homeboundness. The second important point is dealing with anger. As I said that the anger is self-directed, many people are also not aware that whether they are experiencing some anger towards others. Many depressed people are not aware of that. And also, once again, because they have a low self-esteem, they somewhere feel that they do not have a right to be angry, or they are very bad if they are being angry. So for these people, it is very important that that you need to identify guilty reactions to anger, and they need to be made understood that they need to challenge these reactions and come to this term that yes, it is human to feel disappointed and angry. That it is very human to feel like that. But once again, that does not mean that you are encouraging aggressive behavior. There's a whole difference between telling someone that yes, why don't you go and shout, why don't you go and hit someone. It's not about that. It's like saying that that you are a human being. It is but obvious that you would feel let down, you will feel angry. It's very normal to feel that. So allow yourself to feel that, and then let's see what can be done with it in a constructive manner, kind of thing. And because in many cases in almost many depressive personalities, I would say in almost all people with this personality structure, suppressed anger is one major issue, because the anger is suppressed and it's directed towards the self. So dealing with the anger and making them guilt-free in feeling their anger, is very important, and that can then, it has a very, very, I would say, very, quick effect of then, healing their depressive feelings. Right. As I mentioned, as the depressed people feel safer in their angry feelings, they typically become more assertive in their lives, and some people I've seen, they are so filled with joy to say, अच्छा कि आज हमने किसी को बोला कि हम ये नहीं कर सकते, वो person फिर भी हमसे बात कर रहा है, because so when they are able to say those things and they are able to test those things out, that again makes them feel more reassured of their sense of self, and then they go further into that. So then a more assertive stance in relationships, work and social sphere allows for a decrease in feelings of inadequacy, self-directed anger, and eventually depression. Yeah, and as I said, that exploring this self-directed anger is of help in easing this depression, and because once they understand the link between it, they are able to come out of it. We mentioned about the idealization and the devaluation, where the person feels that they need to either measure up to an unrealistic standard, or they need someone else to measure up to that standard. So it's also important to deal with it. So it is crucial to call attention to unrealistic nature of their self assessments. problems, that also needs to be kind of made aware to them, that you are being very, very unrealistic with yourself, kind of thing, in what you want and in what you aspire, and because they feel that they need to demonstrate their value to the world continuously, and when they are able to do it, they feel good about themselves, and when they are not able to feel it, they start devaluing it. So this pattern, you need to first identify this pattern and explain it to them. If you simply say this thing that, oh, stop being unrealistic, that will not make any impact. You need to make them understand, that how this whole pattern is operating and why it is operating. That's why understanding why becomes very important. Right, and then it is important to help depressed people identify, the various tendencies that they have to idealize and devalue the selected others. Because as I said, that the similar tendencies, they can, they can have very unrealistic view or expectations of other people, and when they don't measure it to it, they kind of, they feel bad or hurtful towards other people. So then exploring this tendency often reveals that, that it's a strategy for ignoring painful feelings and depressed feelings. And when the person then is able to communicate this pain in a better manner while preserving their relationship, they actually get a more attuned or an understanding response from the other person, kind of thing. And that also helps them to heal. So it's important for them to be able to feel open to communicate, that if they are feeling let down with someone, it is important that they come to this point where they can, go and explain to the other person that I'm feeling let down by you, and this is why it is. And generally what happens is that when it is worded in the right manner and presented very authentically, both the people do get a space to negotiate something that is like mutually healing for both. So these are the basic things that need to be done. So thank you, and we can now open up for questions.